If you think you hate reading, it's that you probably haven't found the right book yet. Not every reader is meant to love every single book. Not every book is meant to be your 5-star read. So in this episode, I'm going to help you stop reading out of guilt or pressure and start reading books you actually enjoy. And by the end of this video, you will know and have a guideline on how to pick the right books for you and how to pick the right genres for you to start with, especially if you're wanting to get back into reading. So let's get started. Hi friends, welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Caroline and welcome to the second episode in a series that I have going on, which is From Non-Reader to Well-Read. This is a 5-episode series where I will be walking you through the different steps and different mindsets, how to curate your book taste, how to find the right genre for you, how to read, how to actually start reading, and also the practical and step-by-step guide to help you go from reading 0 books to reading every single day. This is the second episode in the series, and in this video we're talking all about how to curate your bookshelf, how to find the right books for you, how to find the right genre for you, because enjoying the book that you read is half the battle. If you've missed the first episode, we talked about all the mindset shifts that should be important when you first get back into reading, and also some of the practical tips and tricks that you could incorporate to start reading right away, and also some of my beginner book recs at the end of the video. So if you haven't checked that out, then please pause this video and go watch that first, because I think watching that video first lays a very nice foundation and groundwork to help you get started and really solidify your mindsets before getting into reading, because obviously having the right mindset is very important, as with anything else. On that note, if you need a digital copy, a digital version of this video, I have a Canva worksheet linked in the description, including all of the bullet points I'm going to be covering in this video, but also some examples, some homework, some assignments to help you get started right away. So if you're interested, if you want some more extra information and extra exercises, then it's linked in the description. Check it out. But if this is the first time that you see my face, hi, welcome. My name is Caroline. I am a full-time research student on campus and also somebody who loves reading and content creation and just loves books. I am very good at incorporating books and incorporating my hobbies into my very busy 9-to-5 daily hectic schedule, busy students type of schedule. So if that's something that you also struggle with, if you're a mom of 3, if you work a 9-to-5, if you work multiple jobs, if you have multiple errands going on throughout the day, but you still want to get back into reading and to read more in 2025, it's never too late to start a reading, by the way. But if that's you, then I think you would really benefit from my video and my channel. So give me a subscribe, give me a like, give me a follow. You know the drill. Let's get straight into the video. Think about the last time you loved a book and you actually enjoyed a book. Was it on vacation? Was it during summer before your high school? Was it during college? Was there a specific summer that brought to mind when you think about enjoying the last book you read? Also, thinking about the books that you enjoyed the last time that you read a book. Was it fast-paced, emotional? Try to reflect on what you've liked before. I think this is the perfect way to start. If you don't know where to start, I think you probably have read a book or 2 or 3 or more than that at least once in your lifetime. Even if you didn't enjoy the last book you read, it's fine, it's data. Just keep in mind that, for example, I don't like to read thriller so much. I don't like to read horror so much. I prefer romance, sweet romance, rom-coms. Those are all data points that you can keep track of, and that could be a very solid starting ground when you first try to narrow down the books and the genres for you. A disclaimer though, even though in this video I'm talking about how to find the right genre for you, but keep in mind the entire goal of reading, in my opinion, is to read diversely and to try to tap your feet into as many genres and as many fields as possible. That's my end goal in life in terms of this hobby. But I think having the right genre and a genre that brings you joy and a genre that motivates you to read at the beginning of your reading journey is very important, because that could really help you read more, help you want to read. And at the beginning, all we want is you wanting to read and you wanting to pick up a book. Even if you have found the right genre for you, the next step would be pushing beyond that boundaries and reading books that are outside of your comfort zone, but then challenging yourself to do that and realizing that, oh, I could actually read diversely. So that's just a disclaimer. But then if you're like a newbie or somebody who's like has been a while since you read and you want to get back into reading, I think narrowing down to the right genre and a genre that brings you joy and brings you motivation is very important. So with that said, I think the first thing that you should notice when you're like doing this first step of reflecting on what you've liked before is noticing on the vibes, how you feel when you read a certain genre. For example, do you feel addicting when you read thriller, or is it like you like to read romance because you feel giddy? So notice the vibes and the emotions that the books or the genres brings to you. At this beginning stage, it doesn't matter much about the content of the books and then whether or not you're reading serious book or not. I think what matters more is finding the vibes and the aesthetic that you enjoy and you like reading about. If you loved The Hunger Games or like Trials, Deadly Trials, things like that, you might enjoy, fast-paced dystopian books or morally gray characters. If you like The Secret History, for example, which has a lot of Greek mythology, then you probably like books that has Greek mythology like Blood of Hercules or The Games Gods Play. If you like, for example, The Great Gatsby, then you might like the writing style that's more lyrical, more prose, more character-driven novels with emotional weight and emotional tension. So by noticing all the things that you liked about the books that you read before, you can then piece together and then really move from there, and then how do you find book recs after you've realized, oh, this is something that I liked about the books? I think TikTok is perfect for finding books with certain keywords. For example, if you like Hunger Games, then you would type into TikTok Hunger Games book recs, for example. We're all very skilled with finding stuff on social media, so I'm not too worried about you not being able to find the books that you want to read next. It's just the knowing what you enjoy is more important. But if you don't remember what you liked, what you enjoyed before, I think it's best that you start with short page-turner addicting reads with not a lot of complex world building and not a lot of character development. If that's the case, then please stay to the end because I have some beginner starter packs. But the key takeaway of this chapter is that your taste doesn't have to be aesthetic or intellectual or dense or thick or thought-provoking. It just has to feel good. Now that you have narrowed down to what you enjoy, I think the next thing that you should do is to try a 3-genre experiment. Instead of reading what you think you should, give yourself permission to explore. What I mean by the 3-genre experiment is that pick 3 different books in very different genre categories. You can pick a book that is plot heavy, that means thriller, fantasy, things like that, or you can pick something that's vibe heavy, focusing purely on enjoyment and vibes and aesthetic. That could be romance, romantasy, rom-coms, and finally you can pick something unexpected like a memoir or a translated work, for example. So after picking 3 books from very different genre categories, read 1 to 2 chapters from each book and then go from there. By reading the first couple of chapters, you can get an idea in terms of the writing style and the vibes and how the author is introducing the story, and then you can decide which book you want to pursue and read through the end. But remember, the goal in terms of trying out this experiment is not to finish the book. It's just to ignite some curiosity and focusing on what intrigues you. Once again, we're still trying to narrow down what you like and what you enjoy as a reader. And one thing that I think is very useful when doing the experiment is that when you have multiple books on hand and multiple options on hand that are very different from one another, I think when you start to mood read, then that's going to be perfect, because mood reading, in my personal experience, is something that happens most of the time for newbies and for people who just get back into reading. And so having 3 options on hand kind of reassures you that even if you don't like one book out of the 3, you can still have 2 other books to choose from. Alleviate that stress of feeling like you have to follow the book through and through. Which brings me to my next point, which is embrace the DNFing. the only motto that I follow, or I try to follow, is if you don't like it, stop reading it. That doesn't make you a bad reader, it makes you a discerning and a selective reader. For those of you who don't know, DNFing is do not finish or putting down a book. In my opinion, there are two types of DNFing. You can either soft DNF, or meaning that you put down a book temporarily and then come back for it. This is usually suitable for when you know and you feel like you're not in the mood for the book at the moment, but then maybe in the future when you go back to it, you might enjoy it later. And then something else is hard DNFing, meaning that you just completely put down a book and never look back and never read it again, or never want to read it again in the near future. And then depending obviously on the vibes and what you get from the book, then you can pick and choose from those two types of DNFing. And something that people usually associate with putting down a book is often shame and guilt. But I'm here to tell you that not finishing a book doesn't make you a bad reader or doesn't take away something from you as a reader. It just gives you more data points as to help you further narrow down to what you actually enjoy and also what you don't enjoy, which I think is equally as important. Know that DNFing a book is not something to be ashamed of. It's actually, in fact, self-care. If you don't enjoy the book and you don't allow yourself to put down a book and you kind of force yourself to drag you to the end of the book, I think it just creates this very negative atmosphere around reading in general. It's difficult to love reading and to actually want to take reading as a hobby if you don't like to read in the first place. So make sure in this couple of beginning stages, make sure you enjoy what you read, and then the rest can worry about it later. Next, I want to talk about why is it hard to put down a book. And this is something that I mentioned in the last episode of this series, which is like all about building your reader identity and helping you to change certain mindsets that you have about reading. Sometimes we tie reading to productivity. This is purely from my experience, but I think other people do that as well, because society that we live at large is very much focused on productivity, efficiency, data, numbers, quota, deadlines, all trying to quantify stuff. And I think this is something that kind of trains us to view reading the same way. A book, something that you have been working towards, maybe you're like 70% in or 80% in, or even if you're like 10%, 20% in, you feel like you have to follow through. So what I think you should do is I think you should unlearn the productivity mindset and stop tying books to the quota, rather than looking at books as something you can enjoy and you could take benefit from, if that makes sense. So the key takeaway of this chapter is, if you don't like a certain book, even if you're 90% through, I don't care how much you're already invested in the book, if you don't enjoy it, simply put it down. Just think of book as shoes. Books are like shoes. Just because they're well made doesn't mean they're gonna fit you. Okay, now that we have figured out what we enjoy, reflecting on what you've liked before, and also embracing and learning to be aware of the guilt associated with DNFing and putting down a book, the next thing that I want to talk about is matching books with your lifestyle and your day-to-day routine. One biggest thing that you could do to incorporate reading into your life and make reading as something that's like an indispensable part of your routine is to make reading as convenient as possible. And you can do this by, for example, bringing books everywhere with you, having a book on hand at all time. But then the other thing is to make sure you match your books with your lifestyle. Not every book is to be read for every moment. Ask yourself, what does my day-to-day routine look like? What am I gonna do today? Do I have a very hectic schedule with like back-to-back meetings? And after that, ask yourself what books can fit into that routine. If you're like busy and you have back-to-back meetings, then I don't think reading something that requires a lot of brain power and a lot of dedication and attention and focus and concentration might work for you. Rather, you would want something that's very fast-paced, very addicting, very easy to read, like a romance or a thriller or a mystery. On the opposite side, vice versa, if you have a long day of commute or a long travel day, or you know that your schedule looks a bit bare today and you don't have a lot going on, then you might want to match a book with similar vibes and similar content. Another thing that I do is I have books for each of the time period throughout the day. So in the morning or like during daytime, I usually bring a book that's rather challenging. If I want to start reading nonfiction, for example, then I might incorporate nonfiction into my daytime routine. And then for the nighttime routine before bed, I know that I need to be relaxed and I know that I need to wind down. My mind has been through a lot that day. I need something that's easy and comprehensible. So that's where I usually would gravitate towards fantasy, romance, something easier to read with characters, plot, with something for me to indulge on and to immerse in and to escape from the world. Meaning having at least 2 books that I read per day, every single day. But especially if I want to incorporate a classic or nonfiction or a challenging memoir or just like a epic fantasy or very hard read into my routine, then I know that I have to divide my day-to-day routine, daytime versus nighttime read. So know yourself and know your schedule, know your brain as well, know your body, know your goals. Things of that nature will help you a lot and will help make books very convenient and a part of your day-to-day. So key takeaway from this chapter is books just don't match your interests only. They can also match your moods and your rhythms of life. So now that we have talked about all of the ways that I do to help me curate and narrow down what I enjoy and to make sure that my books match my day and also embracing the DNF mindset, I want to talk about some curated bundles that I have for you, some book starter packs, if you will. The first bundle that I have is the Cozy Starter Pack. This is the bundle that includes all of the cozy vibes, chill, very aesthetic books that I really enjoy. These are very heartwarming, very comforting reads if you want to think of them that way. The first one that I have is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. This is such a good but also unique rom-com in my opinion. This is about a girl who loves books and who loves reading, and she has this annual book club with her best friends where once a year they would go to this cabin in the woods and they would discuss their favorite series ever, which is Quixotic Falls. So they all have this same favorite author, same favorite series that they love so much. But then this year, only she, the main female character, is available to go to the cabin. All the other friends of her, even her best friend, is busy with their own work and their own life and their own errands. But she still decided to go because she just values that time so much. She just loves being immersed in books and just reading again for the 100th time her favorite romance series ever. But then as she was like road tripping and going and driving towards this cabin in the woods, her car broke down at the middle of the road. What makes things worse is that there's a storm coming. She doesn't have any other choice but to take a turn and go to this nearby village and nearby town to take shelter and wait until the storm passes so that she could continue on her way. Turns out, when she gets to this town, she realizes that this town is actually straight out of the romance series that she loves so much. So what happens there? You might have to read to find out. Okay, the next thing that I have for you in terms of cozy starter pack is Anne of Green Gables. And I know this is the first book of a series. I think even as a standalone, and you can read this book as a standalone, I think the first book is so comforting, so wholesome. I love Anne of Green Gables, and this is such a well-beloved series already, so I know you're gonna love it. It's just like full-on vibes, full-on aesthetic, full-on cozy and comforting. The next one is the one that I recently finished, is The Book of Lost Hours, and this is an arc and it's coming out soon. This I think is a great entry point to fantasy. So if you're thinking of going into fantasy, I think this is the perfect entry point to that genre. But this is about something called the time space. And the time space is this kind of third dimensional space where all of the memories ever existed are stored in the forms of books. So we have people who are called timekeepers who can access this time space via their watch or their clocks. And so there's another groups of people called the watchmaker who can make these magical clocks and magical watches to help the timekeepers go in and out of this time space. We basically follow Elizabeth Levy. Due to some traumatic family stuff, she was kind of locked into this time space, and she basically spends her entire childhood growing up and familiarizing yourself with all the ways, like the boundaries, the rules, and the limits of this time space. And then she also later becomes the symbol of a rebellious movement. In this world, every single country, it's basically set in the same world that we're in, just with another dimension. Every country in this world has their own little timekeeper organization established because they want to kind of curate their memories about their own country differently from the other countries. Each country, they all want other people to view their country as something that's like superior, right, and perfect. They would send out their timekeepers into this time space and eradicate or erase all the other memories that tell the otherwise or the opposite story. So it's about erasing, eradicating, making changes to the past, and then eventually to the present. And then we follow another person, is Amelia, and she is the niece of one of the timekeepers in the US. Go read that book when it comes out. So that's the cozy starter pack. The next bundle that I have is something that's fast and addictive. In this category for me, I have a couple. Most are fantasy, but I have one rom-com, which is Deep End by Ailey Hazelwood. This is such a controversial read, but I loved it. In my opinion, I gave it a 4.75 star in my rating. Check the trigger warnings. That's all I'm gonna say. Check, please, if you want to read this book. It is a sports romance, but it talks about BDSM and kinky stuff. And I like the way Ailey Hazelwood writes and introduces us to the topics in a very gradual way, so you're not gonna be shocked and you're not gonna feel a lot of info dumping in the book. But it is about a swimmer and a diver and how they come to find out the deepest and the most sacred secrets about one another and their sexual preferences and how they kind of negotiate that relationship. There's also a trope of best friend's ex-boyfriend in this book that's being mentioned. The next book that I have that's very fast and addictive and page turning is The Sword of Kaigen by Emma Guang. If this is the first time that you've seen my video, you probably don't know this, but Emma Guang is one of my favorite authors of all time. Sword of Kaigen is basically set in this very ancient village, Japan, with the kimono and the swords practice, things like that. There are 5, I think, noble families, and each of these families, noble families, has their own secret technique in terms of magic. The one family that is mentioned a lot throughout the book is the Matsuda family. They are known for something called the Whispering Blade. So they're known to be able to wield ice and to wield the sword very well. Another family is the Yukano family. They are known to be very fast. And then another family is the Susano, and the Susano is known to be able to wield blood. So we follow Misaki, which is the main female character, and she is the wife to the second son of this Matsuda family. She's a very unique person. You're gonna grow to love her. She's so layered and just like complicated that I love her. There's mention of womanhood, motherhood, and this very, I would say, misogynistic concept about women having to be submissive to their husband. So there's a lot of that. There's this plot twist coming up that I did not even see coming, and I think you're gonna love it. Another one that's very fast and addictive is The Witches of New York. This is a I would say, historical fiction. This is based off of the Salem witch trials in New York in the 1800s. This in fact is set also in New York in the spring of 1880, and we follow Beatrix as she kind of comes to central New York to find a job. But when she comes and she applies for a job in this tea and sympathy shop, she realized that her bosses or the owners of the shop are actually witches. And is she a witch herself? We'll see. Okay, so that's the fast and addictive bundle. The next one is something that's thoughtful but still very easy to digest, but was sure to bring some thoughts and some ideologies to your mind. The first one that I have is The Little Liar, and this one is, I think, also a historical fiction. This is set in Greece when the Nazi invaded Greece, and we follow Nico, and he's I think a 10, 11-year-old boy, and he has to walk this very thin line between truth and lie. He's Jewish, and he is tasked with convincing the people, the Jewish community, to board on this train that's going to Poland. He is to promise them that if they step on this train and they board to Poland, they would be promised a new life with new job, new security, new everything. But turns out that is a complete lie, because where they're actually going to is concentration camps where they will be executed, they will be bullied, they will be abused, they would be exploited, and he has to grapple with dealing with the consequences of that action that he has. Very interesting narrative, and also the narrator of the entire story is truth itself. So there's personification of truth. The author of the book is able to pack so many events and so many emotions, so many thoughts, insights, and revelations into a 300 words. So this is very short, and it left me thinking a lot about the ethnic erasure of Judaism and the Jewish community in general, and that's just like beautiful, beautiful work. Next, I have another book by Emma Guang, and that's Blood of a Bridehaven. This is fantastic. It talks about, in the city of Tehran, we have this tradition of misogyny where women are not expected to do anything except nursing and housekeeping. And they're not allowed to step foot in the government, they're not allowed to hold important jobs, and they're not allowed to become mages. So there's a magic system in this world. It's another fantasy, and the magic system in the world building is very unique. I've never read a magic system that's quite like this. We follow Siona, and she is determined to become the first ever female high mage. No woman has ever been a mage to begin with, let alone a high mage. But she's able to do that, and she made history by doing that. But along the way of her enrolling in this magistry center where she works with other high mages, mostly if not all of them are male high mages, she figured out a very brutal and very, very dark and twisted history and secret about the magic system in the world that she is serving. Finally, in this category, a very, very short and sweet memoir. This is Blue Nights by Joan Didion. I need to read more from her, but this is the first memoir that I've read in a while. But Joan Didion is such an icon, so if you're interested in looking for a non-fiction book, I think anything by Joan Didion is perfect. This is kind of exploration of motherhood, how she grapples with her emotions with death and the many passing aways of people around her, specifically her daughter. The final bundle that I have is Book Talk Books, but make it chill. The first one that I have is Say You Remember Me. This is a romance, a rom-com by Abby Jimenez. This is my first ever Abby Jimenez, and I really, really liked it. This is about a very, very interesting topic in terms of relationship, and that's long distance relationship. This is a story about Xavier, a vet, and Samantha, an employer of the marketing team at a mustard company. They didn't hit it off on the most perfect note. Samantha took a kitten to Xavier's vet, but Xavier, when he took a look at this kitten, he was like, it can never be saved. It cannot be saved. It's done for. You should put it down. And Samantha got very mad because why can you say that when you're supposed to save these poor, miserable creatures? And that's when they kind of had an argument. But then at the end of the session, somehow, he still asked her out for a date. And that date turned out to be the most electrifying, intense, the best, the most perfect date ever. Exactly when they want to get into this relationship with one another, Samantha decided to fly across the country back to California to take care of her mother who has dementia. So there's dementia being mentioned. So if that's something that you're triggered by, I don't recommend reading this book, but I really appreciate the nuances, the scope of the story, how the romantic aspect is not the only topic being mentioned in the book, but we have other topics to go off of and to enjoy. Another romance that I really enjoy is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is another very unique romance. This is a story about two writers competing to write the autobiography of one of the most famous celebrities in this world that they live in. And the thing is, each of them was given a 1 month trial where they would interview this person, where they would write up the draft for their book, and then they would send it to her. So we have that going on, a story about books publishing, which I have never read before, and it's very unique. And last but not least, this is one of my favorite books of the entire year, and that's Circe by Madeline Miller. This is in fact my first 5-star reads of the year. It is very, very atmospheric, but also teaches me a lot about Greek mythology. If you are thinking of getting into Greek mythology, but you don't know where to start, I think this is a great beginning book because it talks a lot about their traditions, but it captures so much of the Greek world, ancient Greek world. And so after reading this book, I feel like I'm prepared to read other Greek classics. For example, I'm thinking of cracking open Metamorphoses by Ovid, and I think this book helps me a lot to do that. It lays the perfect groundwork, and it talks about Circe, the witch of Aya, how she is exiled from her community because she's a witch and she could practice witchcraft. It follows her throughout her life, seeing her grow, seeing her interact with mortals, seeing her fall in love, fall out of love, and seeing her develop this motherly love for her son. So that's Book Talk But Make It Chill, and that is the fourth and final bundle that I curated for all of you. Let me know if you want more curated bundles. I can do that, but these are the four that I can come up with at the moment. The truth is, becoming a reader isn't about reading more. It's about reading what feels right. Your taste is allowed to be evolved, it's allowed to be messy, and it's allowed to be different from everybody else's taste. That's all from me. That's the final takeaway. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had so much fun filming, editing, and doing this video, drafting, outlining everything. I've been loving creating content, and I have a couple of weeks for free and I don't have to do anything else. So I'm gonna be spending most of those time reading and doing content creation. So I hope this video is helpful. If you have not watched the first episode to this series, I'm gonna link it either up here or in the description, so please go check it out. And if you are not subscribed, please do, because other episodes in this series are coming up and they're gonna guarantee to help you become a reader yourself. With that being said, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in every single week to hear me rant about books and reading tips. If you like this video, give me a like, give me a comment, give me a share. If you would like to buy me a book and help me curate my bookshelf, then I have a Ko-fi linked in the description where you can buy me a book, buy me a coffee, buy me a matcha, and support my channel. If you do choose to support, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Let me know in the comments what book made you realize you actually liked reading. For me, it went all the way back to, I think, ACOTAR. I know, I'm that girl, but I really enjoyed the first book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, up until the third book. And after that, I DNF'd the series. And then thank you for listening once again, and I'll hopefully be seeing you next time in the next video very soon. Until then, happy reading! Bye bye!